Any reasonable person would agree that numerous individuals are feeling disengaged right now. Despite the fact that keeping up your separation is the most ideal way you can show your adoration for others right now, people are ordinarily social creatures and everybody is feeling the loss of a little human contact. There have been times in history, however, where individuals, either voluntarily or particularly without wanting to, have been isolated from others. Regardless of whether it was for quite a while or by an immense separation, here are 10 of the most confined individuals who at any point lived. 10. Simeon Stylites. Modern saints tend to be viewed as those who go out into the community and help others, expressing the supernatural through their heroic efforts to improve people's lives. The criteria for sainthood in the ancient world was often quite different. Early saints renounced this world entirely. One of the ways saints did this was to avoid society as much as possible. Monasteries in the desert allowed similarly minded religious folk to live free from the temptations of the world. For some, though, even having others near them was too much. Simeon Stylites made his move towards the divine by literally moving away from the world. He lived for decades on a pole. There was a fashion for Christians living on poles, or stylos, meaning pillar in Greek. Simeon was sent a vision from God at a young age urging him to build a tall pillar. At first he moved to a monastery, but he was expelled for his habit of wearing a rope tightly tied around his waist. This caused the flesh to putrefy and stink, to the annoyance of the other monks. Next he became a hermit on a mountain, but crowds soon came to see the holy man. To escape them, he erected his pillar and moved to the top of it for the next 36 years. The sight of a man on a pillar proved too alluring for the crowds, however, and more people came to see him. As the years passed, he increased the height of his new home to get further away from the people below. On his death, he was immediately proclaimed a saint. Blanche Marnier never had any aim of carrying on with an existence of sequestration. Naturally introduced to a wealthy French family in 1849, she had all the blessings of cash and excellence. Sadly, she likewise had the cruelest mother possible. In 1874, when she was 25 years of age, Blanche reported to her mom that she expected to wed. Her decision of spouse, a simple legal advisor, didn't meet with Madame Marnier's endorsement. To constrain Blanche to adjust her perspective, Madame Marnier secured Blanche a minuscule room in the storage room of the family home. Blanche's mom and sibling kept on carrying on with an ordinary life while Blanche lived in filth above. Madame Marnier obviously believed that Blanche would yield of her choice to wed after some time. Alone to think, however, she never did. Thus her mom never discharged her. Blanche went through the following 25 years, secured her storage room cell. In 1901, a mysterious letter to the specialists uncovered Blanche's day-to-day environments and the house was struck. Blanche was discovered living in her own foulness, engaging minimal in excess of 55 pounds, 25 kilograms. Her rescuers found the awful lady was lying totally bare on a spoiled straw sleeping pad. All around her was shaped a kind of hull produced using waste parts of meat, vegetables, fish, and spoiled bread. We additionally observed clamshells and bugs stumbling into Mademoiselle Marnier's bed. The air was so unbreathable, the smell radiated by the room was rank to such an extent that it was incomprehensible for us to remain any more extended to continue with our investigation. Blanche was spared from her segregation, yet stayed sick and intellectually uneven, passing on in medical clinic in 1913. 8. Julian of Norwich. Isolation is not always so extreme. Some people in history have practiced a form of social isolation that doctors might wish more people were following during this pandemic. Julian of Norwich, living in the 14th century, was able to remain distant from people but also keep up her relationships with others. In the Middle Ages, one way for people to show their devotion to God was to become an anchorite. This involved having a room built next to a church where they could literally be walled in. No one could come in or out of an anchorite's chamber. Sometimes a rite similar to a funeral service was held as the anchorite was walled in to show they were now dead to the world. The only holes into the outside world were ones that let the anchorite see the altar in the church, receive communion, and bring in food. The food hatch could also allow visitors to speak to the imprisoned person within. In 1413, Julian was visited by another religious woman, Marjorie Kemp. Then she was charged by our Lord to go to an anchoress in the same city who was called Dame Julian. And so she did, and many wonderful revelations which she revealed to the anchoress in order to establish if there was any deception in them. For the anchoress was an expert in such things and could give good counsel on the matter. Both ladies became foundational in English literary history, as Marjorie wrote what many consider the first autobiographical text in English, and Julian was the first female author of any kind in English whose work survives. One of the messages Julian received from God may be some comfort at the moment. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. 7. Robert Falcon Scott. Maybe we experience a daily reality such that has nearly been completely investigated. There are hardly any spots that we can go where nobody has gone previously. Toward the start of the 20th century anyway, there were as yet clear fixes on maps and an insanity created for investigation. Robert Falcon Scott, known as Scott of the Antarctic, was a British legend for his experiences towards the South Pole. His first investigation of Antarctica saw his group arrive at further south than anybody had ever been. The subsequent outing saw him accomplish his fantasy about arriving at the South Shaft, yet with heartbreaking outcomes. At the point when his group of 5 arrived at the shaft, they found that an adversary group headed by Roald Amundsen had just beaten them there by 5 weeks. Scott's journal recorded the group's squashed sentiments. Extraordinary God, this is a terrible place. On the walk back towards their boat, one colleague crumbled and passed on. Another, Captain Oates, felt he was hindering the mission, thus set off into the cold all alone to save the others. He left with observed British modest representation of the truth. I am simply heading outside and might be some time. The rest of the group continued, yet snowstorms eased back their advancement. Inside 12 miles of a flexibly warehouse, they couldn't continue. It's not realized who is the last overcomer of their trek, however, whoever it was more likely than not felt alone. Scott's journal closes with a message to whoever discovered them. Last passage. For the well-being of God, take care of our kin. 6. Unknown Amazon Indian. In 1996, the Brazilian government was made mindful of a solitary Amazon Indian man living in the woods. There are numerous indigenous clans in the Amazon, yet what denoted this man out as various is that he was by all accounts forever all alone. Scientists found a few of the man's cottages, all with profound rectangular gaps burrowed inside them. This isn't something some other clan had ever been seen to do. When a fix of backwoods was freed, the remaining parts from a town of 14 cottages was found. All had similar gaps burrowed inside them. Scientists arrived at the resolution that this man was the remainder of his people. No contact has been made with the man. However, video film of him has been taken. Each time tree lumberjacks got excessively close, he would move to another hovel further in the timberland. One endeavor by the lumberjacks to chat with him finished with the Indian terminating a bolt into somebody's chest. It is Brazilian approach not to compel contact on clans that don't need it. It looks as though this man will keep on living alone.